Okay, I think we're live. Hello, everybody, and to our third discussion of Perdido Street Station. Today we're discussing the chapters 29 to 41, so that's the end of yeah, part 5, and
Yes.
I'm, as always, as I can almost say now, joined by Mary from Mary Reads to Live, Varsha from Reading by the Rainy Mountain, Raf from Raf Blue Text, Jarrod from the Fantasy Thinker, and Dan from the Black and Blue Collar Reader. Hello, everybody, and how you doing? How are we doing with Perdido Street Station? And we
Very well.
have also somebody in the chat here.
Britain.
Hello.
Yep.
That's Britain. Hey.
Hey,
Yeah,
Britain.
that's
Yep.
Britain. Yes. Yeah.
It went a lot of places that made me very happy.
I know.
You're still trying to get a handling on it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the handling puns.
every time I think it's like, okay, it can't get any weirder than this. It really can't. Like it's just as weird as it's gonna get.
No.
And then it gets weirder. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. What do we
Yeah, I
make
liked
of?
it.
You liked it? Yeah.
I mean, I liked it. I mean, I liked it before. I still love it. It's so much fun because it goes places and it does fun things.
Yeah. I think it's a
at the
wild
same
ride.
time, it's a very serious book that does, put up some very interesting and general serious observation about the world. But it's also like, hey, look, here's a really dumb joke I can make about role-playing game characters.
Yeah, I think the book is right there in that weird category, and Mayville takes these big chances, and I believe it lands with most of this story, such as with these characters and the events that happen and occur. I just think it was ballsy, and Mieville really made it work for me. Within this book.
I agree, and I also think I love how he is not afraid for characters to suffer consequences for their stupid decisions. I feel like it's very much realistic in that, yeah, you do questionable things, and questionable things are going to come back to bite you in very big ways. And I like that. I think that he doesn't let them get away with their ignorance or with their stuff, right? They either deal with their stuff or some bad things happen. So I like that. I like that he very much has that attitude with these characters of no, it feels like they're like no one's safe, so you never know what's gonna happen, and the consequences are high stakes. And I think that kind of is why it's so readable, even though even through all the weird, you trust him enough to where you're going to get through some of the weirdness, and then you're going to start to understand it, and then you're going to get to that place where you're like, oh, these consequences are interesting. So and I think that's a really good aspect of it, is the high stakes and the consequences.
Yeah, at this point, we still don't know what's going to happen to Lynn, or what happened to Lynn at this
Right.
point. They're telling Isaac that she's dead, but we don't
But
know
do we
for
really
sure.
know?
And
Yeah.
he's trying to keep hope that she's not, but it's kind of a scary situation there. And I like how Mieva really built up the horror aspect when those Slake Moss took what was the girl's name? Babil.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was truly frightening. That was a real horror moment, I thought, in the book.
That was an exceptional moment.
Yeah.
That was really well done again on Mieville's part. I still see that scene kind of very cinematic as well, and the unfolding of these wings. You know, you are entranced with the writing as you are with the wings. You know, it's just a wonderful ride. I love a lot of the things that go on, at least up to where we're at.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, the horror elements have come out much stronger now that the mouths are actually free, and we have all of that stuff happening. That now we know that it's a horror book at its core. What I found a bit troubling, or not troubling, like I think this part is. I mean, obviously, these parts are chosen arbitrarily here, but like I feel like at this point the book gets a bit more. I don't want to. It gets more straightforward and more structured, right? We had like the first half of the book is just exposition or just set up and showing all these different parts and how the city works and doing all that crazy stuff. But now we're sort of having like an actual like very straightforward line kind of plot, which is let's get those fucking slake mouths and kill them. And next part will be to enter the glass house and do all these things. So where the first part is like really sprawling, now it's kind of narrowing down to that end game, so to speak. And while that's obviously necessary and you need that for the novel to work, I'm a bit sad to see all the other stuff kind of fall to the wayside when we're focusing on the actual like main plot, so to speak.
Yeah, I have a bit the same feeling. Like the first part is really very much world building, not building that city, and we go to different parts of the city. Whereas right now it's very much focused now on getting those moths now, because that's the threat and that's where we're focusing on. Whereas before, we got a richer tapestry of, I think, characters as well, no? Because now the characters are also dwindling a little bit. No, we're not having so many hit characters as well. We have a couple more people in the chat. We
are up to chapter 41, which is the end of part 5. The next part is the raid on the glass house. So we'll not talk about the raid on the glass house tonight.
Yeah. So
what happens in the glass house stays in the glass house, at least for now.
Yeah. Hello, Catherine. Somebody else who sits like myself in a relentless. We have rain. It's awful.
You're lacking the mountain, are you? You're lacking the mountain. That's still with Varsha.
I have the rain without the mountain.
Yeah, and I have the mountain without the rain. Something's missing.
And hi, Shadia. And Mike, hello. Yeah. So is there anything in particular what you would like to start with, where you say, okay, we need to talk about that?
Well, you were saying that there was which we lost some characters, but we also gained a couple more, like those strange. He introduced like more strange species or races. He introduced those what were those things that took control of somebody?
The handlingers.
The handlingers, and they were able to actually take control of a dog, and they were actually able to fly. That was some really weird stuff that he suddenly introduced. He might have hinted at it earlier, but now we got the full complement of what they can do. And then he also introduces us to the big construct in the junkyard, and that was pretty fascinating in itself. So there was still some new stuff being introduced, even though it did turn into a more of an action piece at this point.
Would you say that the whole construct council, and I think the term council is important here, is very much a metaphor for a Marxist proletariat kind of revolution in a way? Because you have these constructs, which are basically workers that have like no awareness or anything, and they're slowly gaining self-awareness and creating this thing, which is a council.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That seems to be right up Mieville's wheelhouse, and I'm curious where that's going to go, because it was a little ominous that the the main construct there was said at the end of one of the end of chapter 40. He said, "Bring me your crisis engine to me for safekeeping." And I was like, who's safekeeping?
Well, I can see a vanguardist turn happening there, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know either. I was a little wary about that.
So one thing I want to talk about that I found really interesting from the setup is chapter 29, the one where David betrays Isaac.
Yeah.
Because I find what I find interesting, the way he sets it up, is you have that whole scene of David going down into like the red light district and going to that brothel, and you have all of that stuff in lurid detail, and he's constantly talking about the shame and the self-recrimination and stuff like that. And the way it's built is you're supposed to think that it's David feels ashamed for going to having these weird kinks, so to speak. Actually, the shame is for him to actually betray his friend Isaac to the secret police. But I found that just like really well done in the way it's set up, and it takes all the way until he goes into that room, and suddenly you're like, oh no, he self-recriminations for being a snitch, not for being a pervert.
Yeah, I think that was quite well done. I liked how the secrecy of it, and I said before that how the militia works and this whole surveillance thing they have going on
It's very
reminded
1984.
me. Yeah, either that 1984, but as a real life reference, it reminded me very much of the
Stasi.
Stasi, the surveillance in the eastern part of Germany. Also the way kind of like how he's recruited, not this whole idea that he gets then something in return. And I mean, that's basically very much how they operated as well. No? You wanted to study, they told you, yeah, you spy for us and you get your dream university. No? So, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, those parallels make sense because 1984 is obviously a critique of authoritarian regimes, no matter which side, and the secret police that comes with that. And the Stasi, I guess, for people, at least for people who grow up in Germany or have like a German background, it's a very chilling example of that, because it worked fairly well compared to some other places, and they are more sneaky than just the Stasi is more scary. Is scarier than the Gestapo in that regard, because you never know who's one of them.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I didn't grow up in the eastern part. I grew up in the western part, and I still have a Stasi file because, because a cousin of my mother's was a Stasi informer. And whenever it enabled her also to visit the West. No? That was one of the perks.
Yeah.
And whenever she came, she happily reported back about us. And they knew
I guess I never checked, but I guess I'm just too young to actually have a meaningful Stasi file, because I was like 5 when the wall fell, something like that. So
yeah,
I doubt they reported on me.
I wouldn't say it's meaningful, but it was more meaningful when it came to her husband. But of course, that was who they were interested in. They weren't
of course,
interested so much in us, but still. No?
I think it's important to understand that these kind of secret police kind of things, they're not just something that happens in, places that we from the West usually push to the side and go like, oh, this is something that only happens in North Korea and Latin America, which is why we send all our people in there, like American troops in there to commit mass murder. No, this shit happens all over the place as soon as a society turns toward that kind of level of control. And I think it's important to understand that New Crobazon does have that level of control in there somewhere.
Yeah.
They do have a parliament, but it's not exactly doing anything, is it?
Yeah, and also as we said this before, how they are elected, no, that it's a lottery system who gets the vote and who doesn't. Is
I was wondering
also
if that's like a jokey reference to what people always call democracy when they talk about Greek democracy. When you talk about Athenian democracy, where so much of Athenian democracy was actually done by lot, not by voting. When it's like, well, you had to, there was a lottery that decided who gets to be that kind of council and who gets to be that kind of judge and stuff like that. So much in Greek democracy was actually Athenian democracy was decided by lottery and not by voting. So I found that interesting. Whether maybe he's kind of pushing at that idea that what we hold up as an ideal democracy, at least some people hold up as an ideal democracy, wasn't actually that democratic.
One of the things I thought was interesting when we're looking at the political climate of this story is that when we are dealing with hell, because it's showing it's like a literal metaphor of making a deal with the devil, like
Yeah.
And so I love that, and it's also showing that this is rotten to the core. This is like the political atmosphere here is not it stinks to its core, and I love that they show that very clearly. It also heightens the stakes. It heightens the feeling of like fear of these creatures, as we're kind of afraid of them, but we haven't seen till this point. We haven't seen exactly what they can do. But when hell is just says, "You're on your own," nope. That's when we're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, maybe this is more than Isaac can deal with."
Yeah, I think that's like an interesting aspect to it, because yes, it's rotten to the core, and I think Mieville does something that a lot of people would not do, where it's like, yeah, this is an authoritarian state, and the people in power are the assholes. They control everyone through fear. But he does not stop with Mayor Rotgutter, which is a fantastic name, by the way. But when we have that meeting, when he talks to the security guys, and they're like, well, the bankers sent us this letter. It's like, no, actually, it's the banking concerns, the corporations that actually own the places. The economic power is the power behind the political power. It's not the other way around. And a lot of fantasy books that go into, have like an authoritarian state in some form rarely go down that route, and usually end just with like an evil strongman being the tyrant. It's like, no, the tyrant is in fact just a puppet for like economic concerns.
Yeah, if you have control of the commerce, then you have control of the state, of the plate. That's just the way how else they're going to get people get what they need. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
I love how the spider,
the Weaver
ended up cutting off like one ear of all the militiamen in the laboratory there, and I thought that was just like a beautiful metaphor for like the people in charge only hearing half the problems and only hearing what they want to on one side, and I thought that was lovely.
Yeah, but he also cuts off Isaac's ear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was it Isaac or was it
both?
And Durkin,
everyone's.
both.
Durkin, yeah.
Everyone's.
Durkin,
yeah. Probably also Lemuel. We don't get like an... Oh, no, also Lemuel.
Maybe, yeah. I don't remember.
It does. It's mentioned.
But I remember that he cuts off Isaac's ear and heals the wound. But he cuts off Durkin's ear and doesn't heal the wound.
Yeah. One person that he didn't heal the wound from, and I don't think they know why.
I'm not sure. Yeah, she did mention that because she was still bleeding and they weren't.
Yeah.
It scared Durkin a little more that she's just like, oh, all these guys got healed but me, and now it's in the back of her mind that maybe he's not done with her or something.
Right. Yeah. But it was just funny because the militiamen with the one ear really stood out when they were having their little council later after Isaac and them were already gone, and that's what stood out for me for that part of it.
Yeah, I love how he kind of the Weaver, kind of made this bond with Isaac, and yet he still wanted to remind Isaac and whoever he saved that you guys need to know who you're dealing with. I'm not all there. I'm still gonna cut your ear, even though I saved you, kind of. I just loved the character of the Weaver. He was just so interesting. And it's probably because none of his words made a whit of sense. But you still read them over and over, thinking like maybe there's some poetry that I'm missing here. But no, he was just in his own universe. Actually, he was in a lot of other universes because this character being a multi-dimensional arachnid is just is bonkers, and I just think it worked within this story.
Yeah, I think a lot of things work really well with the Weaver, because going with the spider, going with an arachnid is already a good idea, because spiders look alien to us, and Mieville does a good job of just making the Weaver feel alien, and not just dangerous, it's just like incomprehensible. It's like, yeah, he may help you, but he may just like fuck you up because it looks better. And that complete randomness, or like that is probably not random from the Weaver's perspective, but from our perspective, I think he does a good job of actually creating that feeling.
Yeah, Yagarek called the spider. He danced with the spider, and he cut a caper with the dancing mad god. So he called him a mad god.
Yeah,
I feel that was probably a very deliberate Azathoth reference from like the Lovecraft mythos, where Azathoth is the blind idiot god at the center of the universe, with all the mad flutes piping around him and so forth. It feels very deliberately like a Lovecraft reference to me.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting what Catherine says. I really like the Weaver too. It was like a cross between Arachne and Kali, this Indian goddess. I mean, the Weaver is, I think, a lot about. I think the Weaver himself sees himself as an artist. It's all about kind of like getting the pattern of the world web right, and cutting off those ears is also part of that. That seems to, from his point of view, rectify some problem or issue with that pattern. And I think he signifies a lot how creation and destruction are very, very closely linked in some respects. I think that's another aspect of him.
A multi-dimensional arachnid with OCD. Like, I can't just cut one person's ear off. Like, if I did one, like, I'm gonna get you.
You got to do all of them.
Exactly. If I do one, I have to do 8 or 10, or it has to be.
It has to fit my pattern. It has to fit. I cut one. Sorry, the pattern has been started. You all lose an ear.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I love the multi-dimensional battle between the Weaver and the
Slake Moth.
Yeah, the Slake Moth. I thought that was. I mean, I was sort of speed reading it because I don't like battle scenes that much, but then I had to stop because there was something special going on here. It was a multi-dimensional battle, and it was phasing in and out and attacking the moth in a different dimension. I thought that was really beautifully done, adding to the picture of the Weaver as this alien feeling creature.
It almost felt like a dance, and it felt like poetry, the way it was written. Really good.
Also, we now know that slake moths live in a matriarchy.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, one of them became the queen or something, right?
Yeah. Like one of them became the female, the others became male, but it's made very clear that the one who has the most power, that is the dominant one, becomes the female.
Yeah. And the others become also then very referential and
yeah.
Did
you pick up on Mayor Rotgutter being the I Spy killer? It's something that happens, like gets mentioned off and on, that the eye spy killer struck again, and then we have
Yeah.
that mention that Ben Flex, that a body without eyes gets found in the river and is later identified as Ben Flex, who was obviously the editor for Renegade Rampant. And
Yeah.
then we have the mention later on when Rotgutter is talking to the other guy that that he needs a new pair of eyes because the eyes keep getting rejected.
I did not
Totally
pick up on
missed
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's
subtle because it
interesting.
kind of happens in the background, and I think that's like a really clever thing that Mieville does a bunch of times when he just pulls back and does this like city panorama, and in that city panorama, the random things he mentions aren't in fact random because they make up that pattern that certain weavers are trying to fix or whatever. So it's really well done. It's like, yeah, and in this street this happened, and in this street this happened, and maybe some of these things are important or maybe not. And if you pay attention, you can see these kind of things like the eye spy killer that gets mentioned really early on and then goes back. And I really, really like that part.
I thought
Because
he
it is
had
so subtle and you
something to
don't
do
need to know.
with the mantis or that guy. I don't want to go too far ahead. I think I might have. I thought the mention of that killer early on, was he a
Yeah.
serial killer? It was mentioned that there was a serial killer in
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I thought that he was. I think I'm gonna go ahead, but I'm just not. Let's just drop it. I think I might go further ahead. I've read the whole book, so I don't want to go too far ahead to where we used to stop. So I'm just gonna stop here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. The slake moths are hermaphrodites, but as soon as they reach sexual maturity and for this mating thing, they do decide then which sex or gender they want to go with, and the most dominant one, becomes a female. Yeah.
So while I was reading this, with I guess when in regards to tone, when we get the city, it does feel like this dark tone, but I get this very quirkish tone, like kind of like a Pratchett-esque, like having the governor deal with hell, like out of the blue.
Yeah.
It just felt very quirky and very, it just felt very Pratchett-esque, these
It
crazy
might just be a very
things,
British approach to doing things. I guess
spider.
yeah. Maybe it's just people living in London.
It could be. So a thing that I made a mistake of doing, because I did finish this book. I'm sorry, guys, I couldn't, stop. But then I picked up Kraken by China.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
which is a
yeah. Okay.
fantastically fun novel.
It is, but I think it would have benefited that novel if it was actually a story in Bashlag. That's the name of this world, right?
Yeah, that's the world. Yeah, Baslag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bash.
Yeah,
I think
that's
it would have served that story if it was that and not modern
London.
day London. If that story was in modern day London, I am going on
But
to.
it's got Star Trek teleporting wizards.
Yes, that was madness. That book, and now, but I'm getting things confused because there is this kind of underground thing going on in that book, and there's an underground thing going on in Perdido Street Station, and I'm like, wait, I'm like getting the two confused between each other.
Yeah, well, both cities have a lot of knuckleheads, but some are realer than the other.
That's so true.
Sorry, that's a joke that only works if you've read Kraken, which I encourage you to do because it's really funny and a bit more lighthearted
okay.
than.
I don't know. It's not my favorite Mieville, but it's
No,
okay.
I was not. I didn't like it as much. It had so much potential. When you describe Kraken to somebody, the plot, you're just like, wow, that sounds awesome, and it was awesome. But I think the execution just fell flat when it came to the story as it progressed, and it went in places I didn't want to see it go. but it was a wild ride, and it was not my type of humor. But yeah, I prefer Perdido Street Station way more than Kraken. And Kraken
Yeah.
had the potential to be better than Perdido Street Station at the start when I was reading it, but then fell off as I continued to read that story.
Hmm. Yeah, Britton says he likes how Miewell describes how the city dreams, how how they dream. What any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought that section was really beautiful. I tend to highlight when I come across passages that I like. All of Yakrek's first-person perspectives are really beautiful, like
Yeah.
Dan said, but also these descriptions of how the city dreams, which also I think I had an inkling when Isaac was on Dream Shit, but the revelation
Yeah.
that it's actually what he consumed was the dreams or consciousnesses of people that were eaten by the slake moth. What do you guys think of that? I
Yep.
thought that was terrifying. It
Oh, yeah.
gave me the
Oh yeah, that's
Very terrifying.
so
And yeah, and we found out from the professor guy that there's no coming back from it. That was confirmed by him.
yeah.
yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was, it is terrifying. You're right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I also
It's
had
also it's not so much the dreams, but the subconscious. I think that the moth sucks out. No?
Mhm.
yeah.
Which is also interesting that without our subconscious, at least in this novel, we are reduced to a vegetable state almost, no? Where like it's like they're in this waking coma that they
It's
enter.
like
So it's like,
it's actually something worse than death, really. You know, you
Yeah.
would actually be
and
stuck in
you would
nightmare
actually think if the
society.
consciousness is gone, that would happen, but it's actually the subconscious that's gone and it happens, no? Which I find interesting as well.
Yeah, it feels like it was kind of like a they were cut off from some kind of collective, almost like a collective subconsciousness. Maybe that could be connected to other universes and things too, because these are inter-universal beings, right? So it could be dimensional. I mean, yeah, interdimensional. So maybe it's like you're cut off from some kind of connection to the dimensions and your dimension that you're in, things like that, which I think is very interesting concept. Even though I don't think it's like specifically explained, but I think it could be like that, where it's just like you're just cut off from something that from your dimension that comes in subconsciously to your soul, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the question about whether if they only feed on dreams and thoughts, as it seemed before we got to the chapter where Vermishank told us otherwise. I did wonder why they were turned into vegetables. But then we got Isaac's perspective when he was sort of held in the thrall of the moth that came for him specifically, right? And it sort of told us about how it was attacking his very subconscious. So I thought that was very powerful, because I had that question: why can't they continue making thoughts, right? But it is just going at a much deeper level. So I thought that was well done in terms of getting an alternate perspective that also tells us just how scary what Vermishank told us about.
Yeah. So now, the original moth that Isaac took home, that's now dead, right? That was killed by the
That's killed by the council.
The council, the construct,
the construct council.
And was another one of the moths also damaged by the handlingers?
Yeah.
Was it killed or just damaged?
I think just damaged.
Okay, so there's still 4 moths out there, right? All right, and they're tougher than the runts that Isaac brought up.
They kept calling him damaged, like there was not was not properly nourished.
that was interesting how he developed that, and that because that moth didn't developed on the full the full meals that
Yeah,
the other
because
moths
it
had.
didn't get the pure dream shit, but
Right, the pure stuff.
already,
It was laced. It was stuff
yeah, it
laced,
was already
yeah,
cut for
by
human consumption.
by
And
Mr. Motley there, or what was his name?
yeah,
Yeah,
Motley, yeah.
the mob boss, and
I like
so that
this
was
comment by Britain as well. It's their equivalent of a crack baby
Yeah,
jeez.
from the
I
biggest
like
of
that.
the bunch. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I found that part of it fascinating, and it was it's kind of that was kind of almost a social commentary in and of itself about how something can be stunted by improper nutrition and stuff like that, even though it was these horrifying creatures. But
Yeah, this is the other thing. Now you almost feel a bit sorry for it, even though you know
at that
it
point, yeah,
is not great. Yeah, where has Raf gone?
Raph got cut into another dimension, I think.
Yeah. I hope he wasn't looking at a slake moth.
He's in another dimension, writing riddles.
Probably. Yeah, having a little chat with the weaver or something. Yeah. I
Get
hope
some
he will be able
clarifications on some
to.
things.
Yeah, I hope he will be able to rejoin us. And that his system problems are not acting up too much.
Is he on the backstage? Because I see a message from him asking if we can hear him.
I don't have him.
Yeah, he's
Yes.
in private chat.
Yeah. I have him coming up and it says device is not connected. Here we are. Welcome back.
Yeah, seems my internet died for a second, and I got kicked out.
We were wondering if you had a little chat with the weaver.
Yeah, I saw the threads of the universe. It was beautiful, but it's hard to describe, and it kind of drove me mad. But here's the thing that I wanted to say, because there's the whole thing with the dream shit and the way it works, and the way the slate moths work, is a terrifying image or a terrifying metaphor for how capitalism works, because it takes people's individuality all away and takes their consciousness away, and that stuff gets turned into drugs that are then fed back to people to keep them alive or keep them interested, which is very much how alienation works within capitalism. I think that's deliberate on.
But I mean,
Diego's
it's
part.
not the consciousness that, and we were just talking about that. It's not the consciousness that the moth sucks out, but it's the unconscious or subconscious.
Look, it's both, isn't it? Because the subconscious. The subconscious is linked to the conscious, because the subconscious, all our experiences, in all the different issues that we all have, and it's interesting when they do that with Isaac, when he stares into the wings of the moth and stuff like that. It's all these things, all the past, all the memories, all that stuff, that the sediments of our personality that get dragged up. But those are the things that make us individual. It's not, not a rational thinking that makes us individual. It's our past experiences and our personality that gets built through all the stuff that we go through on our way to, being where we are right now. I think that's sort of the point behind it. Is that's the interesting stuff, because that's what makes us individuals, and it gets packaged and and sold to other people for consumption, which is a bit terrifying for you.
Especially since they have the whole image of you can't come back from it. Once you have given, if you're that metaphor as you're saying, once you have given that away, you can't get that part of yourself back. Like, it's just
Once you give them that up, once you're in the system, once alienation is complete, you're done.
Yeah. Mike asks, do we know for sure that the construct kills the runt moth? And I think, yes, we know for sure, because Isaac wears this helmet to amplify his, I don't know, thoughts or subconscious or whatever it does, to attract this particular moth that has almost imprinted on him. and then the construct just drops a pile of rubbish or whatever on top of it.
Yeah,
So
and
I
there's a
think-
scene like at the end because it it kind of bleeds out and everything, and that part ends with described like death sigh or whatever when it completely bleeds out. So we're sure that one is dead.
I still had a
Yeah.
little bit of doubt at the end of that because, I mean, it probably is dead, but then Vermishank said that it exists in multiple dimensions, so it's hard to kill.
Yeah.
But you have to damage it so badly in one dimension that it doesn't survive. So I guess the part that matters to the citizens of New Crobuzon are the physical thing that sucks their
Yeah.
consciousness. So maybe it is dead for practical purposes.
Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Yeah.
What did you think of that last Yacharek part? Before the glasshouse part, when he goes through his past and he deliberately walks amongst the beggars and so forth. Because I find that very interesting. It's almost like a deliberately like a Christ-like thing, right? He goes back and he deals with all the scum, all the outsiders, all the people that have been pushed out of society, and he walks amongst them. But then he goes like, well, but I'm doing this for myself.
Yeah, Yacharek is still a little bit an enigma, I think. No, when the betrayal happens, and that construct at home who got consciousness tells Isaac that he has been betrayed. Yacharek says, I know everything about betrayal because I committed betrayal as well. That was my crime. I mean, it doesn't really tell us yet what exactly he did, but that's at least a strong hint. So yeah, he is really a very, still enigmatic character, I think.
Yeah, at this
one
point in the
thing-
book, I
yeah.
believe that he was trying this, him living among the dregs of society was a punishment that he bestowed on himself. At least that's how I saw it. But I loved how, the first person point of view that we get from Yag is just exceptionally written.
What I really like about it is how we get these glimpses, and it still builds all up to that question what he has done at the end, which those of you who have finished it by now know what it boils down to. And it's interesting to see how his descriptions of his crime kind of change over time, and how those like first person narratives that we get kind of make it very easy to kind of like the guy. All the
like how
while
this
he's
is a little
telling
bit
us
more
that he's done something terrible.
Yeah, and I like how this is a little bit more hopeful now too. Like there's a little bit more self-empowerment in this. Like it's almost like he's like, okay, I've got either I'm going to get a little bit of redemption or I'm going to die, and that seemed to give him that seemed to give him a direction,
Yeah.
clarity almost.
Yeah,
I really liked for his character.
Yeah, he mentions that when he returns to Grist Twist, which is where he came from, I'm assuming, that his companions will be waiting and we will liberate this hijacked city thanklessly and unseen. So he has some sort of hopeful plan in his head as for something. And I love
or
how
at least purpose, no?
Yeah,
some type of
a purpose. Yeah, something that he's thinking about. And I love how he mentions because he compares himself to Lemuel sniffing for contacts and retracing his steps, and he also mentions like he will touch the immigrants and the refugees and the outsiders who make up New Crobuzon and this place with bastard culture and this mongrel city. And to me that just was Mieville describing London almost in those moments right there. And I really like how that ties into Yagarek's purpose in his self mission.
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely on some type of redemption arc, but sometimes I think he is still very much invested in this idea that he wants to fly again. I think he hasn't given up on that.
Mm-hmm.
even so, he has become more and more pedestrian. Now he's stopped. How shall I say? He stopped almost being a type
They're
of
like acting as if he carrying himself like he still had his wings, right? That kind of thing.
yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I like how, Mieville is really playing with his redemption arc here. Because he is leaving us all in the dark as to what he's done to have his wings clipped. But yet when we get his first person point of view, we feel that he is a good person. But that's the thing, is that I think we're supposed to get that feeling, but we get that feeling from our points of view, our cultural points of view. And it gets really interesting when we do find out, the story progresses. This question about Yag and what he's done, it gets very interesting.
It's choice theft.
The choice theft, yes.
Yeah.
And that part of this book is something that like I said, I did finish it, but it's
For next time, what this guy.
it still sticks with me, and it's something that we will definitely dive into.
Yeah, you will have to keep that to yourself till the next time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just excited. I get it. I get excited.
Yeah, but that's kind of why I'm bringing it up. Like every time we talk about it, it's like it's important to be aware of how it works, right? It's important to see how Mieville does shape our perspective on Yakarev for the end, which is why I've brought it up every time. It's like, hey, what do you think he's done? Because it's so easy to like the guy. All the while he's telling you that he's done something terrible, and it's like, oh well, it's just choice theft. What could that be?
Well, of the second degree, not just any choice theft.
That is true. Also, Mike, I'm sorry. Yes, I switched to cores, and the reason is that I'm broke, and there was an overstock seller that sold these for like 30 cents the can, and I just, that's like basically nothing.
It's our Rocky Mountain water, yeah.
It is. It certainly is. But once again, it's like 30 cents for half a liter is insanely cheap, even for German beer.
Yeah, well, I would really like to know, what is your cheap German beer? Because in like America, it's like natural light ice, and you can buy like a 30-pack for like 40 cents. It's like the worst beer you can get, but people buy it because you get so much of it.
There's different ones that are really cheap in Germany, but even the most of the cheap ones, there's some really terrible ones, but even the most of the cheap ones are still very drinkable. And what you usually do is you buy yourself like a really good beer, like one that you really like, or maybe 1 or 2 bottles, and then after that you switch to the cheap one, because after the third bottle you won't be able to taste the difference anyway.
Oh, we're getting really into this, huh? You're giving us tricks of the trade over here, Raph.
Yes, road drinking trips with Raph. You should do a video. On that.
Yeah.
This is what you do. You buy the good shit until you're ripe and ready, and you get the bad stuff to, finish you off for the rest of the night.
It's a bit like listening to my former students. Like, I mean, they have all those kind of like things down to a T. Or the whole thing kind of, what was this? I was explained to me. Eating is cheating.
Yeah.
So.
But that's a different thing. That's kind of the point where, like, is the goal to get fucked up, or is the goal to drink something because you like the taste?
I think for students, it's still the goal to get fucked up, mostly anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Until you have that out of your system and can develop your tastes for this, that, and the other.
I deal with high school teenagers as a teacher, and and they're just starting to like get into that, try to get some of them into that mindset of like trying all these different things, and they're talking about it, and it's just like, and I tell them, I was like, guys, It's not as cool as you think. It really is not. But they don't
Yeah.
believe me.
Yeah, but I think some of those things you just have to find out for yourself. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter what
that's-
other people tell you.
That's,
Yep.
I got a teenager, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
he's gonna find out. What am I gonna do? But
Yeah. Me too. It's
I'll prepare him. But
no matter how much you tell them, it's like doesn't matter. They're gonna do it themselves.
No, some mistakes you're gonna make because
Yeah.
otherwise you won't learn.
sure,
Yep.
because I made
Well, at least it's not.
I made plenty of them.
At least it's not dream shit.
Right?
Yeah.
At
That
least
is
it's
true. That stuff's bad for you. But I think it's once again it's
I
important
don't
to
think we
understand.
should put the judgment out on dream shit just yet.
No, I think
Right.
I think it's pretty bad.
Because
but,
after Dream Shit, my man kind of solved the mystery of this engine, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think
That's true.
like what I
Something
appreciate
opened up there, and all of a sudden, he solves the what's the engine called?
The chaos.
crisis
the crisis,
The
crisis
crisis
engine.
engine.
Crisis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crisis. Yeah.
He gets slipped to Mickey, goes into a dreamlike state, shares a dream with this slake moth, and then solves the chaos engine.
Just like Paul
That-
Atreides.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand, and I like how actually Mieville kind of talks about it when Wormashank tells them how things work, and that moment when Isaac realizes that he's gotten high on other people's lives that are now ruined, and I think it's important to understand, like when we take drugs, no matter what, it's like there's a cost out there to consumption, especially when you go with drugs, because illegal drugs do have all kinds of problems. You don't want to know how the people are treated that make coke or that grow coke or grow like what's it called, the stuff you make heroin out
Opium.
The poppies. That's the plants I was talking about. Yeah, the poppies. You don't want to know how those people are treated. It's terrible. And Mieville makes that very explicit when he has that point. And Isaac, even though he didn't actually, choose to do it, still has that bad feeling. And I really appreciated that because it's, something to keep in mind.
How is so? Shadia brings up how is a dream shit made again?
It's those it's the excretions
the
and it's
milk
cut with stuff.
It's the milk of those slake moths that they feed their young. And instead of feeding their young, that's taken away from them and then cut with other substances so that humans can actually feed on it or
I
get
totally
high on
missed that one. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where the dream shot is coming from.
Yeah,
and this is why Motley is so keen on getting those moths back, because that ruins his business, no?
But that's like the other part, because Motley is just a businessman. The only thing he can conceive of in that situation is that someone else is trying to actually take him over. He's doing that a very specific thing, like it's paranoid politics, basically. It's paranoid. It's a very specific paranoid mindset that you can see, for example, I've come across it in like anti-Semitism studies. It's that people that are terrible people can only conceive of their enemies doing the things that they would do if they had the power, which is when Motley's like, well, obviously what Isaac wants to do is build up his own supply and get muscle in on my territory. He cannot actually conceive of Isaac just accidentally stumbling into something, because Isaac is a bit of a bumbling idiot.
Yeah, that is actually, for Isaac, it's a science project gone wrong. And for Motley, it's a hostile takeover.
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
I just love how it goes wrong for him too.
Exactly. That would,
Mike, I'm not sure if he got inspired to build the Crisis engine from the Dream Ship, because I'm a bit hazy, because it's been like weeks since we talked about that. I'm a bit hazy about the timeline, whether he first has his drug trip and then builds the thing, or it's the other way around.
In that one.
No, I think he has the trip first and then builds the machine. And he says at some stage that he can't account how he came to all those calculations, that they just appeared in his brain.
But was this after the dream shit or before?
I think it was after, yeah.
I'm just not quite sure. It could be, but I would have to double check and go back and read it. And it's like, who reads books twice? Not me.
I'll read this one twice.
No. We would never reread anything. No.
I've never reread a book in my entire life. I don't do that.
Really? Yeah. I'm gonna have to read one.
He
I
says,
actually
as he
haven't.
reads Guards by Terry Pratchett every single night for the entire year.
I have yet to reread something, but I am on the mission to do a reread of one of my favorite series. So I will be rereading a book for the first time.
No, I'm constantly rereading stuff. It's just like one of those things. But let's go back to the Perdido Street Station.
Indeed. So Britain says it's nice to see Isaac step up and become more heroic as the novel moves along. Is he becoming more heroic? Is he stepping up finally? Is he finally taking responsibility? Or is he still just interested in his crisis engine and how to kill the moth and seeing this more as a scientific problem?
I see
I think
myself.
they're all intertwined. I think he is trying to take responsibility, but I think it's all interconnected. Like all of those things are kind of wrapped into one in his mind.
Now, here's the thing. I sympathize a lot with Isaac. Like I have ADHD, and I can see myself in a lot of the stuff that Isaac does and the way he does things. And when he finds out that whole scene, when he finds out that the construct is sentient, he completely forgets all the important things because like there's this new shiny thing that he has to focus on right now, and that's the thing that he has to deal with. And they could have just gotten out of the place and ignored the whole fucking militia thing if Isaac hadn't gone into hyper focus on the stupid construct. And that kind of like aimless kind of drifting because he's getting interested in everything that happens. I recognize a lot of myself in that. And I don't think he's stepping up. He's just like forced to do some things. And
well, he's also extremely worried about Lynn too. That drives his his heroism a little bit because he really wants to find her.
Certainly wants to, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really was helpful for me, for me to really even more connect with his character, to realize how much he does care about Lynn. That she wasn't just hey, when I have time, I'm just gonna, have fun with this person and, we get along. No, he actually has genuine good feelings for her. And they kind of hinted at that throughout the book, but it's good to see that, we see that he really does care for her. And I like that about his character. But even though he's a little flighty and he's got, all over the place, he still does have those connections.
I think that's like part of what makes Isaac so interesting. He's a very, very human character. He's not a hero. He's a lot of things, but he's very human in how he behaves all the time. He's like, a bit of a coward, I guess very easily derailed by stuff, but he's a nice guy underneath all of that, and he's constantly doubting himself being a nice guy. There's a lot of self-doubt in Isaac as well.
Well, he had no qualms though. Putting on the screws for the interrogation when he needed some information from his was it ex-boss there?
Yeah. Well, he probably also really hated the guy to begin with.
Yeah. So he's definitely a very complex and well-rounded character.
What I also like is that he is quite average, no? Also in his appearance, he's unfit, no? Which proves more and more a problem, no? When they're on the run now. But that makes it actually quite realistic then as well, no? Because what are the chances of any of us, no, doing all this kind of like running into the sewers, out of the sewers, no, up a hill, down there, over the roofs, no? I mean, I'm just exhausted by reading it, no, never mind doing it. So yeah, I actually like that, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's done really well.
Yeah, I would have pulled a muscle and thrown up somewhere.
Definitely. I would have. I would have done the Gimli. I'd have been like, keep going, guys. I'll catch up.
yeah, all that roof stuff wouldn't be good for me. I really have problems with heights, so I wonder if I would make it even up onto the roof. Never mind running along one. So not good.
Certainly not a healthy pursuit.
No, that's for sure. At least not if one trains for couch potato of the year, though. That's definitely out. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Um,
Can we come back to the Construct Council, perhaps?
Yeah.
What do we make of that? I mean, it's actually not just one consciousness, no, it's like a collective consciousness of machines in a way. No? Raf said it's maybe a metaphor for Marxism, which is most likely, but also then Marxism meets AI in a way, no? Because this thing is a machine intelligence.
Yeah. I did really appreciate the wonderful the fact that all of this is steampunk style running on punch cards. There's a wonderful thing that kind of reminded me because I've read that a while ago, and every time I hear punch cards, I have to go that road. Have you guys ever read? Any of you ever read the wonderful stainless steel rat series by Harry Harrison?
No.
They're sort of
long time
comedy
ago.
sci-fi
Haven't
from the
even heard of
60s.
it. Okay.
Harry Harrison is the guy who wrote a story called Make Room, which was turned into a movie, which is called Soylent Green. He's that guy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
The Stainless Steel Rat is a series of shorter novels that are sort of funny sci-fi. He's like this criminal guy who has to hunt other criminals in space. It's funny,
yes,
sort of
yes,
humorous sci-fi.
yeah.
It's a lot of fun. But the first book has this scene where where that main character is put onto a spaceship that is auto-programmed to fly to the prison planet, and because he has to go to the prison because he's a criminal, and he gets free and he goes to the spaceship's like flight deck, and he hacks the computer, which means he takes out the punch cards that are there to have like the course to the prison planet, and he physically punches new holes in those punch cards to derail the ship, which is just so brilliant. And it's kind of what I came up with when like what it reminded me of when we had the mechanic hacking the construct.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember you mentioned that last time. Yeah,
it's just so funny.
that was great. Yeah, that was a fascinating. And I thought it was brilliant how it was in a junkyard basically.
Yeah.
And so they just had all the materials there that they needed to make this sentient creature one, and make many sentients into one one giant council of sentience basically for these machines. And I thought that was brilliantly done how Mieva did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the development of the the construct, just forming out of this garbage pile of discarded and
it is what us Marxists would call the Lumpenproletariat.
and
They
like
have no regard for the individual, like for what the individual. That doesn't occur to him, to the construct, that there is individual agency, because he's just like, oh, I'm going to do this, and he just does it, like without
they
of
lack
thought.
all the humanity, the niceties. Like he just meets these people, he's on their side, this construct, and he just ropes them all up, and instead of explain to them, hey, I'm with you guys, this is what we're gonna do, he just makes them a prisoner real quick, and just misses out on all those those social niceties that we're supposed to go through. And it's very it has a lot to do with AI, and not having a human spin on anything. I really dug this concept.
And that's not the first time that's happened to Isaac and Durkin, because the Spider did the same thing. the spider wrapped them up and took them somewhere else as prisoners, basically. Then the Construct Council does the same thing. They kind of take them prisoner.
Catherine says, I found the use or indeed abuse of the human tethered to the machine very disturbing.
That was
creepy. I think it's important to understand that that human was dead before it got used, right? The machine council did not kill that guy. He mentions that like he found a body floating down the river and he just took it. Which
and
you can still have arguments with.
Stinks and it's disgusting. You know, it's just I love the the visual that we get.
Yeah, but
provides with it.
I know, but I think that's deliberate because on the other hand, the machine council is made out of all the machines that got discarded and just like thrown on the dump. So why wouldn't it just take a human that got basically thrown on the dump?
Yeah. So that's the body they use, a discarded body in the river.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. I mean, Abel has said in several interviews that he has a fascination with anything garbage.
Yeah. So, I've read a bunch of his books. I could tell.
Yeah. I mean, almost every book has some garbagey kind of like scenes or whatever. And also the way he uses smell.
Yeah.
And scents and smells in his novels is, I think, quite unique and compelling. Yeah.
What do you guys think of the Adventurers? Because I just have to go there because I've played enough tabletop role-playing games and it's just so funny when he goes like, well, they'll do anything for gold and experience, and it makes me laugh every time. They're just glorified grave robbers.
Yeah.
As a D&D, as a role player, D&D player, I found that funny too. I'm like,
yeah,
I see you.
It's murder hobos, as we say.
Murder hobos,
yeah. Yeah, I'm the murder hobo.
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
Yeah, but that I think makes the novel so great because this almost irreverent self-referentiality, no? I mean, I think Mieville is, of course, well aware of this connection between gaming and fantasy, and then having kind of like scenes like that and characters like that is just priceless in a way.
Yeah, it just made me laugh so much. Like that. We don't want to deal with those people.
Yeah. He's written stuff for role-playing games as well. So
and there was supposed to be there was supposed to be a tabletop role-playing game for Baslag that never got made.
Yeah, they had a section on it in Dragon Magazine back in 2007 or something like that. There was a little piece on Perdido Street Station. But that's all.
It got licensed by Adamant Entertainment, which is the company by Gareth Michael Skarka, who then did the Far West Kickstarter that took like 15 years to complete. It just got like the PDF got sent out last week, and I know that because I backed it because and that was like done in like 2005 or something. So it took forever to come out, and so because of all these like issues, the whole like even like fully announced and so forth, Perdido Street Station or Baslag role-playing game never actually came out. But yeah, Mieville has written for that stuff, and he is certainly aware of gaming.
Oh yeah. And I like that he doesn't take himself too seriously, and it shows in his writing that he's entertaining us as well as writing something that's really thoughtful and deep as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect. There's a difference between sincerity and taking yourself serious. You can do both, and you don't have to. You can be funny and still sincere in what you do, and Mieville definitely is sincere in what he does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Also, that despite all the weirdness that's going on in the books, and that can be at the start at least a little bit disorientating, it's never there to how shall I say, lead the reader on or disappoint the reader or kind of like, how shall I say, misdirect the reader in a way that is how deliberate or anything like that. No, at some stage those things really actually come together somehow. No, so despite
Yeah.
being very much anti-genre and very much
It's not just for shock value.
exactly,
It's there
yeah,
for a
Yeah.
purpose, and it's
yeah.
there for a reason.
I did feel the whole like handlinger scene felt a bit gratuitous, because you don't need
and
that entire section could have been cut out.
Yeah, people in the chat were saying that as well. They were
Yeah.
saying that was so excruciatingly boring to read.
I didn't find it
and
boring, but it doesn't actually add any, like, move the plot forward or anything. It's just from me able
No.
to show off another really weird thing that he came up with, which is the handlingers, and give us that weird battle in the sky with the Weaver. And I
yeah,
get why he's doing it, but it's, it's the equivalent of, having Batman ride over a mountain in Iceland on a horse. It's like, yeah, it looks cool. I get it.
I mean, the Viva thing I do actually get more so than the handlingers, because
Yeah, but the handlingers are our perspective in that moment to see the Weaver, because the Weaver is not like you can't make the Weaver the point of view character. So we see that battle in the sky between the Weaver and the Moths. We see that through the eyes of the handlingers.
Okay.
yeah, but then that would be their only function, I think.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they don't add anything in the sense of that we get a different type of consciousness that could combat those moths. Now we
Yeah.
know by now that anything that works in the same way that human works and have this mix of conscious and subconscious, not this kind of like conscious thought plus the dream component, that anything that works like that will not be
Yeah.
able to combat the moss. No, so from that point of view, the handlingers, as there are in that respect, like humans, are nothing that can actually win against them.
Yeah, I think what the handlingers did for the story was give this world, give a little more depth to the world, but not just the world, the political system and the govern, the people that are running it. Because
Yeah.
we don't get much from them. We get to see a little bit from what was the governor's name again? Not the
Rot gutter.
Rutgutter.
Yeah, him.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
Bentham
yeah,
Rot gutter.
Rutgutter. We don't get to see much of, what goes on with them, behind the scenes in this system that they are running. They're running a city, but we don't really get to see their inner workings, right? But with these handlingers, we do get to see that they are, trying to at least to act on what is going on in this city. So I feel that the introduction of these, different creatures just gave them a little more presence, I believe, in the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously reasons why you can put that scene in, and obviously Data and his editors didn't object to it, and it makes sense. But yeah, it felt like an interlude in a way that was just like dropped in there. And what I found interesting is like the way they behave. It comes out of nowhere, right? The way he builds it up is like you start with like, yeah, apparently there's these parasites that can control human beings, but they also can fly and shoot fire. It's like, where's that coming from?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I found yes, I say that they didn't add a lot to what was going on in the story,
I think that scene alone added to my feeling of that quirkiness, that
Yeah.
Pratchett-esque feeling
yeah,
that I was
yeah.
getting, because it was so oddball and strange. And
I feel it also for me gave me a sense of the quirkiness, but also that humans are like way, way, way down when it comes to the food chain, in a sense. Now you've got creatures that can do this, and they can't defeat the moth. Like that's just crazy. And so it's just showing like where humans really are in all this craziness. We're like way down here. Like we could do
Oh
nothing.
yeah,
And so
we're
it's really
food.
showing that really clearly.
No, we're just food for the moth anyway. No, so yeah.
But still, humans are in charge.
So they think.
Well,
Maybe.
at least
I
like
mean, I think as humans, we have this capacity to really convince us that we are in charge, even if we're not. No.
I mean, isn't this the reason why the Weaver has entered the picture? Because he does not want the human race to be wiped out,
Mm.
and to help, to remove these slake moths, because that's his whole purpose, is to weave throughout the human race.
Yeah, we obviously have some type of purpose in his whatever creation he thinks he's doing.
Well,
And
the slake
Isaac,
moths-
he finds Isaac
Yeah.
compelling because Isaac seems to be the closest of the humans to the Weaver, because Isaac, and that at least that's what the Weaver tells him at some point, you can weave. It's very incomplete and very sketchy and not up to my level of weaving, but you are a person or a human that can weave.
Yeah,
But
I
is it
think
just Isaac or the entire group?
I thought it just refers to Isaac.
Because I thought it referred to at least Isaac and Durkin and the construct and possibly Lemuel. I did have, because he uses plural in that thing. Can I just say I love that whole thing that the Weaver communicates by writing letters to a newspaper.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
And he signs it with a W, and I'm like,
Well,
it's just so subtly funny. It's like, man, did you really? Yeah, you did.
And wasn't the Weaver concerned also that the slake moths might mess up his tapestry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we see when Yakarek opens his eyes and perceives part of the Weaver's web journeys, like the web around New Crobison is like bleached out because they suck out all the life.
Yes, right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he is in. I believe the Weaver is intervening because these slake moths are the top of the list of the food chain, and they'll wipe out the human race, and then when that occurs, the Weaver has nothing to weave, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's why he's entered the picture to assist, Isaac and whoever else,
Yeah. Can I come back very quickly to Bentham Rutgutter? Did anybody pick up on this first name, Bentham?
For Jeremy
Kind of
Bentham,
like
which kind of makes
Jeremy
sense. He does
Bentham,
run a bit of a panopticon down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of ignored that he was named Bentham, but yeah, now that because mostly he's just called Mayor Brotgutter, and I kind of probably just skimmed over the bit when we get his first name. But yeah, Bentham is definitely chosen with care there.
Yeah, I think so too. Not kind of like Jeremy Bentham, the inventor of the panopticon, this idea that a prison should be built in the round with kind of like one person in the middle that can then survey everything that's going on around them.
Also, gay rights activist and corpse that still hangs around in universities.
Yeah, I actually, when I was in London working, I actually saw Bentham in his cupboard because they basically taxidermied him and had him on display sitting in a cupboard basically with the doors open, and we're quite happy to show him off to visitors like myself. I think they don't do this anymore. I think he's not on show anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's
so he
part
has
of
a
it. Like
afterlife.
He kind of put that in his will, that he gave all his money to the university under the condition that they taxidermy him and pull him out for certain
University
functions.
College,
so they have to...
University College London has him in his cupboard.
They have to show him off from time to time. That's part of the will. It's like...
Yeah.
Weird dude,
Um,
but as I say, like
I
also
got
very
to
much
see
in
him, and
favor
I
of gay
can tell
rights.
you one of the more weirder experience of my academic life.
Understandable. Still a very funny guy. um, and yeah, like Rotgutter is certainly, I do love the name Rotgutter as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's yeah.
Rotgut.
Yeah.
It is an interesting name. I like it. It's fun to say.
Like in general, he's so good with the names. Mayville
Oh,
is
yeah.
so good with names. Everything in this town, the names, the places, are the names of the places of people. There's so many fun things happening there in between. I was like, yeah, someone who's having fun with words.
Oh, very much so. Like, I mean, as we said, now some parts are so beautifully written. So yeah, he has definitely fun with words. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the part where we stop ends with, this matriarch moth with her impregnated eggs flying off, trying to build a nest,
Yeah.
which we can say is obviously not a good thing to happen, I presume. No?
There's like two things that I find interesting. On the one hand, it's obviously that the way, it's a horror story. So we're introduced to the threat, which are the slake moths, and now we're introduced to the way worse threat, which is like even more slake moths because they're now breeding, which is that part. But also, if the slake moths doing slake moth things are turning the city into a nightmare place, now that they start fucking, what does that do to New Chromazone?
Oh, I mean, obviously not good. People are already not sleeping. No?
I think the flavor of the dreams are going to be a little different.
Yeah.
Is what
Yeah.
I was just wondering
I think
that.
is what
Yes.
Raph is touching on.
Yeah.
But wow, it's absolutely bonkers. This book, though, you can't really
Yeah.
say enough about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminded if the ending kind of reminded me of kind of like that. Have you guys have ever seen the movie Aliens? The first movie Alien, where
Yeah.
it's just one alien,
Mm.
and now we're in the second,
Yeah.
the aliens part, where it's like there's more of them, there's a nest, and now they have to combat that, and so we're getting into
Yeah.
that
Sure.
that
Yeah.
part of the story. So it's like it reminded me
Yeah.
of Aliens, and I was like, so this is that, they're gonna have to take care of the nest and all that stuff. So that could be very, very interesting.
I think you're touching on a really important bit there because the parallels to Alien and Aliens, I think, are deliberate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I like that comparison.
Hmm.
So now we need a Ripley. Where's Ripley?
Yeah. Where's Ripley?
Well, all you got
I've
so
got an
far is
idea, but I'm gonna
Isaac.
keep my mouth shut because that may not be, and I don't want to break my own heart. I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah. Maybe Isaac will be Ripley. We'll see.
Maybe Isaac will be our Ripley.
Mm.
As Raph and Dan
I think
keep
he's
their
more
mouths
mute,
shut.
to be honest. But you can hope for Ripley.
I'm not sure if Isaac would make for a really good Ripley.
Nah, probably not even a good Newt either. I think Newt has more common sense.
Yeah.
I do feel very much for Isaac. I feel very much like Isaac a lot of
I like
times. so
Isaac. I like Isaac a lot. I'm picking on him, but I do like him as a character. I think very relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
he's,
think that's
he's
why
just
he's very.
so normal.
Yeah. Exactly. He's very relatable. He's a bit an everyman. An everyman character in
Yeah.
a way. Yeah.
I
He's
would
very
say
much
he's
that.
flawed as well. I don't think he's this perfect character or anything. We touched about whether he's being heroic. I don't. At this part of the book, I don't see him making any major heroic gestures. Again, he was kind of the one who wanted to keep his relationship between him and Lynn private. So it was. There are certain things about him that I dislike or that I don't like, and I don't see him as a hero, but I do like him as a character, and I do feel for him as
He's
a character. as well.
He's a
Yeah.
slightly overweight, middle-aged, failed academic. He
Yeah.
would be perfect for like John Williams' novel. He could be stoner, but instead he's fucked and he has to fight slick moths.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Anything we haven't mentioned yet, what we should mention, want to mention?
Not from this part of the book, because
Yeah, we got
there's a lot of stuff I want to mention later on. But
Yeah.
Looking
yeah,
forward to
we
it.
got about 200
Okay.
pages to go here, and I'm itching to get into it.
Yeah.
That stuff will be fun.
Oh yeah, the next discussion I think will be really interesting.
yeah,
Yep.
I might be knee deep in the Scar by then.
Ooh.
But I'm gonna reread this
Ooh.
ending because I love it. Honestly, I love this world. I mean,
Well,
Mieville
you
just
can't-
created an
Here's
amazing
a
world.
here's a really dumb joke, but you can't say Scar without saying R. Because it's all about pirates.
Hey, our flag means death comes on, going to be next month. So works.
No, the Scar it does very much have like pirate stuff in it. And the
Yeah,
Iron
I hear it's
Council.
very aquatic. The
It's-
Scar
yeah.
is but and it's not really a continuation. It's just more from this world.
Yeah, it's a different story in the same world, and
Hmm.
the Iron Council is another one, and that one is full on unionization, worker struggle stuff.
Kind of like Terry Pratchett, where same world, different aspects of the world, different people, different.
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And I think
Where's
the
that?
Discworld parallels that some of you brought up earlier, they are there. Obviously, this one is a much darker version of Discworld, but there are certain parallels and certain ways of looking at the world and describing the world that I think
Hmm.
are.
I'm also wondering if it's because I'm American that's how I see it as well, because with reading Discworld, it's very cultural, very London humor type that you get there, and I'm picking that up from Mieville's writing. I'm picking up that kind of sophisticated dry humor that you get from that area, and I think that's why I'm making these comparisons rather than somebody that may live in London or read plenty of books that are written about London, or many authors from London. Maybe they wouldn't pick up that parallel, but for me, I think it sticks out. And maybe it's because it's just I've read these two authors, and I'm feeling a lot of similarities between them.
It's rated R Doctor Who. No, sorry.
Yes, yeah. I mean, this is I do feel it's rated R Pratchett. Now, in a world, Pratchett really developed this amazing, quirky world with amazing characters, and I do feel that Mieville is creating that with Baslag.
Yeah, I think it's
But
just
darker,
like the different.
darker
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
Because Pratchett's politics that come through are way more on the sort of like classical liberal kind of side of things. Small businesses need to thrive and stuff like that. Whereas over there you have dedicated Marxist China Mieville, who has a very different view of how a society works, and I think that kind of shows up. Pratchett is more optimistic, I think, with
I
society.
would really like to get into because I don't know Mieville's politics. So, what is it, Raph? Where do you see his politics having influence on his writing? Just how he develops this world in particular.
Well, he's written about it a lot, and he's a member of the British Socialist Party, and he has, like, his last book was a primer on the Communist Manifesto. So he's been very open about these kind of things. There are parts where he talks about how he creates worlds, which is very deliberate. There's an interesting essay he wrote about world building. One of those things when he, not the one where he was really insulting to Tolkien, which is super funny, but another one where he talks about Tolkien is like the radical thing is that Tolkien gave fantasy is the ability to build worlds according to our fantasy that have nothing to do and that don't need to have anything to do with our world. And that's a radical idea because we can build true utopias. We can do whatever after Tolkien because he started doing that. And then he gets pissed off that no one does that and everyone just like recreates what they think is medieval Europe. And I think it's important to understand that like when he creates a world, he does create a world because he wants to show something. He does not just go like, oh, I'll just create another, medieval Europe knockoff, but he does something there. And Vaslag and especially Perdido Street Station in this case and New Crobuzon are based on London, but very much on like a Dickens style, early 19th century, early industrial age sort of society.
Yeah.
Mixed with that authoritarian dictatorship kind of thing. And there's a reason for that. He wants you to not like that society. He wants you to get angry. So I think we can assume that, what he's doing is political inherently because that's, he's a political person through and through.
Yeah, I think he actually ran for office at one point too.
Oh, yeah. He did.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he doesn't hide his political affiliation, and I think it's quite obvious in his writing as well. No? So, yeah.
I appreciate that. And his introduction to the Communist Manifesto is actually a really good introduction to the Communist Manifesto. If any of you have not read the Communist Manifesto and want a good like primer on like what it is and why it might be relevant, what the main criticisms are and so forth. It's a good, short book, and he reads the audiobook himself, so there's that.
Yeah, I read it back. I was a sociology major, so I read the manifesto back in college, and I don't remember much of it. I remember, many of the theories of sociology, structural and functionalism and things like that. But
yeah. I think it's a good text. It's an extremely well written text compared to some of the other things that Marx wrote over time, and you have to see it as a document of its time. And I think that's sort of like what you can see there, what you can see with like your Charles Dickens novels, later your Upton Sinclair novels, and what Mieville is doing with stuff like Perdido Street Station is portraying that city, that dark city, that that place where so much exploitation happens. And there's an almost like journalistic approach to that, right? That, people like Dickens and Sinclair and up to a point also Mieville bring into that, which is like, we need to show how terrible things are because that will hopefully motivate people to do something. In the case of Sinclair, it was like, well, maybe people will become socialists. Instead, they're like, well, we want our slaughterhouse to be cleaner because we don't want to eat rotten meat. And I don't know where this goes with Mieville, but I think that's sort of like the approach there. It's like, just describe and show the system and where the system is going, and hope that people will take action, because it's fairly obvious that, you don't want to live in New Crobuzon unless you're, the boss hog, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only people who are going to succeed in New Crobuzon are the people that that are completely the villains. Like they're completely that we are not on their side. We don't like them at all. So it kind of shows that very clearly.
But that's like the
not
other
much
part.
different from today's society, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But that's like the other part that is so important in there. Like even the people that are supposed to be in power, like Rodgutter and those people, they are still slaves to the system, because at the end of the day, New Crobuzon is that system. It's not these individuals. They don't run the city. The city runs these people. But it needs some people that get like more privilege to do these parts of the city. But at the end of the day, it's that whole thing behind it that is the actual dark power. And I think which is interesting, because that also means that the Machine Council, the Construct Council, is still reliant on the system, on Perdido Street Station to keep functioning, right? It needs that as well.
Yeah, it's the institutionalized system from centuries build up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, is that a good last word for today? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Join the machine revolution.
Vita shirt made. We're the Machine Revolution group.
Okay, in that case, thank you, everybody. Thank you to everybody in the chat as well. And yeah, next, our last discussion in probably something like 2 weeks again. So thank you and bye.
Yeah.